everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff.
Hi,
Uh,
Joe.
Hi.
Glad to see you're feeling better.
Yeah, thank you. I had the flu that was going around that everybody seemed to be getting.
Yep.
Um, getting recovering from it. Um, I don't recommend it.
No stars. Could not
No,
recommend.
no, but feeling better. Um, so I suggested tonight that we talk about principled resignations.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we can go
There's a
into some of the
spate of them in our government, and we've talked about ethical objections in work
yeah,
matters ourselves.
and I think it relates absolutely to the principles. I think I would postulate that certain principles, certain virtues are the driving force behind ethical, behind principled resignations. But before we get into that, what are you drinking tonight?
I have been able to reconstitute my one of my favorite cocktails, a maple whiskey fever tree ginger beer with a splash of fireball, and I've added some ironfish. Let me get this right. Smoked maple cherry bitters.
Wow.
So that's a little adding some complexity
Yeah.
to my little concoction here.
I thought about making a cocktail I recently tried a while ago, which was a riff on a whiskey sour that actually used pomegranate liqueur and cranberry bitters. And it's really good, and I made it at home. It was hard to find cranberry bitters, but it seemed like just too much work to make. So I opted for a glass of Pinot Grigio, and this one is an Italian one, and it's very lemony.
Hmm.
It's really interesting. But well, here's to you. So,
That's
a
nice.
little bit of history. In October of 1973, uh, Richard Nixon, who was president at the time, was under investigation because of the Watergate break-in. And there was a
Yes.
special prosecutor, Archibald Cox was his name.
Hmm.
And Nixon ordered his Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, to fire Archibald Cox. And Richardson refused and resigned
Right.
because he would not comply with the what he considered an unlawful order. And then Nixon ordered the Deputy Attorney General, William Ruckelshaus, to fire Cox, and Ruckelshaus resigned rather than comply. And this became known as the Saturday Night Massacre,
Right.
and um, and both of these people were Republican appointees,
Hmm.
and but they resigned. More recently, um, the I think it was the Attorney General ordered, or someone in the Department of Justice ordered prosecutors to drop the case against the corruption case against the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and several of them successively refused and resigned. And the quotation from one of them, um, uh, Assistant Southern District of New York Assistant U.S. Attorney Hagen Scotton wrote to the Deputy Attorney General who had told him to drop the case. He said, any assistant U.S. attorney would know that our laws and traditions do not allow using the prosecutorial power to influence other citizens, much less elected officials, in this way. Because what they were seeking to do was drop the charges against the mayor of New York City in exchange for his official cooperation in deporting people.
Yes.
And so the Scotton continued, if no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who's enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me. Great, great letter. Uh, and even more recently, several staffers in the department, was it um, um, the Department of Government Efficiency, so-called. It's not actually a department, but they
Right.
resigned, refusing to use their technical expertise to dismantle critical public services.
Right.
So there's
They were previously already members of uh,
the digital service,
digital
United States
services.
Digital
Yes.
Service,
And they were subsumed by this Doge
Doge.
nonsense.
Yes.
Um, and so we're basically trying to continue to do their jobs. And they were told, well, no, this is what we want you to do instead. And they said, no, sorry, we're
Yep.
out.
So people argued during the first Trump administration that by staying on, they thought they could mitigate the worst impulses and actions of the administration.
Yes.
Um, that no longer seems to be, and while I don't necessarily agree with that, I understood their reasoning and thought that was principled, but I don't think that even is a possibility now. Uh, so the question, I apologize for coughing. The question is, first of all, first of all, the virtues that relate our sense of justice. What is just? What is
Yes.
correct? What also is, and just as the one attorney said, somebody who would do this has to be a fool or a coward, and it's not me. So there's courage to do this, and there is your own principles and standing up for that. So, um,
Well, I think there's a couple of aspects here for me that in many cases, well, we've both discussed our own run-ins with what we consider unethical business practices in our
yes,
professional lives. And we have on occasion uh, had to take a stand and say, I'm not going to do this.
yep,
You cannot ask me ethically to do this thing, whatever it was. And and I suppose that there would be an ethical stand to take in a situation like that where if you force me to do this, I quit. And
hmm
that's certainly an ethical stand. But I think I've always thought that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my having a job because you are asking me. So I've said, I won't do it. What are you going to do? You're going
yes,
to have to fire me, and then we'll see what happens.
yeah, yeah. And I've had several of those situations. One where an account executive, I've mentioned this before, account executive refused. He said he was not going to pay the studio that I had hired. I was the
Right?
art director, and I'd hired a studio to do some work, and the budget was all approved, everything. And he said, "Well, we're just not going to pay him." So he said, "What are they going to do? Sue us?" And I was so angry, and I left that meeting. I went straight to his boss's office, knocked on his door, asked if I could talk to him, closed the door behind, explained the situation, said, I cannot work for a company that won't honor its commitments because it's the company's reputation, but it's also my reputation. These are
Hmm.
good people, and I've worked with them at that point, I'd worked with them for 20 years, this studio, and they do great work, and it's my reputation. And he said, good for him. He said, if this company made promises to vendors, we will stand by them. We will pay our bills. Said, very good. I left the meeting, and a month later, the studio had gotten paid, and the account executive was no longer working there. And
Good.
but I presented that situation to students, saying, you're going to encounter it without a doubt, absolutely 100% guaranteed, you're going to encounter ethical situations where you're going to have to decide what you're going to do, and you better start thinking about it now, because I needed the job, and
Right.
what was I gonna? Well, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep working there. And there have been others. I mean, early on in my career, when a I was I was a keyliner. uh,
No, we don't have time to explain what that is.
yeah, yeah,
Nobody
that's
remembers it.
yeah. But I was, pasting up books and laying out books and stuff. And you don't read the content, just it's just enough to make sure, it's
It's in,
continuity.
yeah, it's in order. Yeah.
Yeah, but some of it, you can notice some of the words, and I realized this was a neo-Nazi publication. And I put it down, and I went to my supervisor's office, and I said, I don't know if you're aware of what it is that I'm working on, but here's what it is, and I'm not going to continue working on it. I'm done working on that. Put me on something else, but or do what you will, but I will not do that. So he assigned it to somebody else and signed me something else, and he didn't seem to bat an eye about it, but um gave me doubts about working there, but it wasn't that much longer that I wasn't anymore. Um, but
Yeah,
there,
we
yeah,
we had a very recently at my job, I was asked to produce a piece that was essentially a Holocaust denial sign for somebody. And I mean, we'd done work for this guy before, and he's kind of a, you know, he would give us these kind of cryptic messages to put on signs. There were obviously some kind of um, Zionist, you know,
anti-Zionist.
anti-Zionist
Yeah,
propaganda type stuff, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But this was like, this crossed the line for me, and I took it to my boss, the owner of the company. And I said, we can't, I can't do this. I will not have any part of this. I said, if I will leave and you can do it, and I'll see you tomorrow, but I'm not going to do it. And he said no. To his credit, he said no, no, you're right. That's crossing the line. And he called the guy up and say, hey, we can't do this job. And related to me by my boss, the guy said, oh, they got to you, huh? Like, this is some kind of not only
yeah,
is he an idiot, he's a conspiracy theory believing idiot, and you can take your business elsewhere.
yeah, yeah. You can give me this name later.
I don't even know if I remember it.
I'll contact my people and let them know. Um, um, I think that uh, uh, one of the apart from the individual virtues, justice, which is Department of Justice, right?
Right?
Attorneys. Aside from that, and honesty, which are well related, and courage, I think one of the things that we've touched on occasionally is how someone inhabits all the virtues, embodies all the virtues
Oh, if only there was a
in their
single
life.
word that described that
Yes, if only there were.
state.
Oh, there is such a word, sprezzatura. But I think that that's significant, because it's not when somebody resigns because of principle, it's not simply that they're saying what you're asking me to do is not just. And they're also exercising courage. and they're not only saying what you're asking me to do isn't honest. Well, they're doing several things all at the same time and embodied by this principled stand that they're taking. And I think
Uh,
that's why it's more than just an exercise of a single virtue.
and while I understand, and this is what I was going to get at, is this sort of second, for me, the an additional aspect of this. I think what you were talking about, you were citing Nixon's administration, and I think in some ways that was, at least in part, part of it was a principled stand. The other part was, I am not going to be roped into this, illegal thing that's happening here. I will not go down with the rest of you when this comes out.
Yeah.
So I am removing myself from this the only way I can by resigning my position here.
Yes.
Now, and that's still okay. It's still making a statement, but there's a certain amount of self-preservation beyond
Yes.
courage.
I think that the example of the excuse me. Wow. I think the example of the self-preservation resignation that has more to do with self-preservation than principle are the resignations that occurred on January 6th. Um,
Yes.
when on the there was the insurrection, there was the all going on. That administration had already lost the first Trump administration. They'd lost the election. They were on their way out, and now people were resigning and they're
Right.
saying, I that's was just too far. Now you're doing it. Now you're resigning. You're trying to save. You're looking out for your future career prospects
Yeah.
on the way out the door.
Hoping to avoid being investigated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were like none of the other bullshit, none of the other illegal stuff, none of the other stuff that happened.
Right.
But yeah, well, yeah, that was awful, but you should have taken a stand before that.
Right. And that's kind of what I'm again, what I'm talking about with I'm not going to resign. I'm going to refuse these orders and you're going to have to fire me. And then we'll go to court and all of these orders are going to be talked about again. I
Mhm.
think would have been in some cases a better stand to take than, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm out. See ya. I think that I would rather had all of these people line up and say, nope, tear their orders up publicly and say, nope, I'm going to sit right here at my desk and I'm going to do my job, but I'm not doing this. You can take that and shove it up your
Yeah.
procedure.
Well, I think that's interesting. The question is whether or not, certainly in government, can someone refuse an order? Is that considered a resignation?
It's the especially these independent agencies that are
Yeah,
being
yeah.
looted and destroyed. There are many of their charters require them to uh, well, to be independent, to not take
Mhm.
a side, to be politically
Yeah,
neutral. Um, and when being asked to do something that is not politically neutral, you can say, no, sorry, this is not,
yeah,
this violates our charter. Um, we were appointed to do this thing, and you're saying we should do something else. I mean, we're not going to do that. And some of those organizations are in fact doing that.
yes. Well,
I
and
also
the
think
the yeah, go ahead.
I also want to kind of point out that um, we can talk about this in general terms, and we're specifically talking about what's happening in our government right now, and it should be talked about. But some of these principles are harder to apply to somebody in a day-to-day job in the private sector where it's sometimes difficult to take that principled stand, and there's a certain amount of privilege associated with saying I can just quit and find employment elsewhere,
Yeah.
or I don't need employment. I've got plenty of savings. I'm not worried about working for the government anymore. I was doing it out of a
Sense of
sense of
duty.
civic duty anyway. So I'm just going to quit now and go back to nursing my investments.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult, and I don't want to diminish that. It's extremely difficult to make that stance, take that stance in the private sector, particularly at will employment, where you can be fired immediately for and no reason has to be given. Um, I think that it's extremely difficult, and I faced that in a couple of situations. It's like I need the job, but to and there was absolutely no guarantee I'd find another one. Times being what they were. Um,
Well, yeah, but now an important point in Michigan, at least, and I have had occasion to be made aware of this law, is that in Michigan, at least, or at least 20 years ago when this was an issue, and I suspect it's still in place, that yes, it's at will, and yes, you can be fired for no reason at all. But unless actual cause is given, you are eligible for unemployment
right,
compensation.
right,
So, you know, but if you quit, you are not
right.
eligible. So
Um,
that's why I say
is it
to
better to
you,
make
I say to those of you who are faced with an ethical dilemma, make them fire you.
yeah,
And then when they try and shut you out from your benefits, go to your Michigan Employment Securities Commission and say, here's why they fired me. Make them deny it, you know. So there's,
document it, take contemporaneous notes. Um,
yeah,
yeah, get in get everything in writing.
record
Document.
your exit interview. And if they
Yeah,
refuse to let you record it, put that in your document.
yep. And I think a lot of companies have gotten very good at a certain stock excuses. Oh, we're downsizing. We're adjusting for market conditions. We're doing, yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
But none of that matters as far as your unemployment
yeah.
compensation. That's the
Um,
company's decision. It is not your fault. You are
right,
not let go with cause.
right. Uh, um, yeah, it can be really difficult to document ill intent on the company's part, but in a lot of ways, you don't have to. You just have to document that you were let go.
Right.
Um,
Right. The way it's set up again here in Michigan, my only experience of it is that they sort of default to you getting it.
right,
And the company that lets you go has to provide cause for not, because the company who hired you has to keep paying your compensation, part of your unemployment compensation after you're let go. That's part of the deal. Um, so they want to deny you getting coverage because then they don't have to keep paying. And it goes, there's a record that a history of firing people will make it harder for them to get out of paying. And there's a lot of factors, but um, yeah,
yeah,
if they don't provide a good reason for firing you, you get your
yeah.
compensation, you get your
I think if
benefit.
you are asked to do something unethical, illegal, you should document that, write it down, take notes. And there's certainly employment attorneys who you could
Oh yeah,
consult with. I belong to a union, and so that would be one of my calls, although, whether that would do any good, it's questionable. Um, but yeah, I would certainly call them. I think the it's challenging though. You're correct in a private situation. And, a lot of these people we're talking about um in government, they will go into something else. They or have other
Right.
things or left private attorneys certainly left private practice to go to the government and they can go back into their firms. Um, so, but it's different if you're,
Yeah.
yeah.
So while I want to applaud taking a principled stand amongst a lot of these government employees, they they're not putting themselves into any hardship by doing it, I don't think.
Well, in some ways it's more of a statement,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's an important statement.
Right. Like I said, I think a more powerful statement would have been, nope, I'm not going to do it. Your move.
Yeah. I haven't seen examples of that
Oh,
would be interesting.
there's been a couple. There's been a
Yeah, have
couple.
there?
Yeah, and it was a I don't remember now. I should have looked this up before we started, but there was a woman who was head of an organization and they were going to fire her and she said, "Well, I'm not going anywhere. So, if you want to send guys here to drag me out of my office, we'll see how that plays. But I'm going you can't fire." Well, it was to Elon Musk.
Right.
Reply was, you have no authority to fire me. I'm going to stay here in my job until I am, all of the legal steps have been taken to remove me.
Yeah, I think that raises another very closely related issue, and that is non-compliance. And
Hmm.
one of the principles of resisting authoritarianism is don't comply in advance.
Right.
Make them make you, force them to. Slow things down, slow walk things, object, block, deny
Yep.
everything possible. I actually wrote and called. Need to do it again because I'm going to be doing it at least once a week. Wrote and called to my elected representatives, representative and senators, and said, well, it was interesting too. One only had a DC phone number, one senator. One had a local phone number, but there was the mailbox was full, the voicemail
Yeah.
box was full. The other one, it simply there was no answer, no voicemail box. The representative, I actually spoke to somebody and said, I'd like to leave an opinion and gave my information about who I am, where I live, and said, I oppose everything.
Yeah.
Don't agree. This, it's this is not business as usual.
Right.
This is different, and treat it like it's different, and do everything possible to to
Well, I
put a
mean,
wrench in the
at
works.
least force a confrontation.
Yeah, yeah,
At the very least, if you lose, fine. Just, I mean, kind of like what Senate has done most recently in forcing a vote on every single thing. You
yes.
make an amendment, make them vote it down.
And that's the thing that bothered me is that why did it take why didn't they realize that they needed to do that from the beginning?
Yeah.
From the beginning. They only realized that once they started getting what was it rather than hundreds of calls a day, they were getting tens of thousands of calls a day, flooding the switchboard
Yep.
and and emails to which I still never gotten a response. And said, why did it take them so long to realize that was in the situation they were in? I've said before, you always know in a disaster movie, alien invasion movie, zombie movie, the last the person who's denying the changed circumstances, the one who's refusing to acknowledge the changed situation, is the first one to perish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why they didn't recognize what it was, having had months to prepare, having warned people about what was going to happen, why they didn't recognize it and start taking action immediately. I don't know. I really don't know.
And I worry that, uh, well, I don't want to get too far off of our
Yeah,
base
yeah.
subject here, but I worry that at what point did they give up? I mean, or were you thinking that this was going to be manageable somehow?
Like people who stayed in the first administration and thinking they could manage things. And
Yeah, well, a lot of those people, uh, yeah, those people got fired. Those people
yeah,
were some of the first to go,
yeah,
who thought they could try and manage.
yeah,
I think they tipped their hand then, or immediately afterwards, and never expected, as a lot of people didn't, this administration to return ever.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Um, and
I,
the people now who are saying, well, I didn't mean that they should cut this thing that I get.
yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. So now you are starting to regret your vote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of buyer's remorse out there.
yeah, yeah, not enough. Um,
Oh, it's going to continue to get worse.
yeah,
I think it's going to get worse at least until the midterms.
yes,
And then I'm a little worried about what happens then.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, um, well, at least we can vacation at the Gulf of America.
Yeah, whatever. Let's continue to make ourselves a laughing stock around the world.
Yeah. Um, so, um, so I think the idea of a principled resignation, I agree with you. There's a place for that, but there's also a place for make them fire you, make them tell you you have to do this or you're out,
Right.
and make a stink about it too.
Right. Yeah.
Make a big stink about it. Um, there's there are ways of making a scene. There's ways of making a scene and a time and place to do it loudly and publicly. And there's times to make a scene in the media and in the courts and to do it that way.
Right.
Um,
And if you make a scene, make sure that you don't cause any property damage or assault anybody. That completely undercuts any argument
yes.
you've got. So,
Yeah. Even if you have a president who's willing to pardon you.
yeah, well, yeah, that's not going to
Well,
fly in the private sector.
no. And I've seen that the police organizations are now they were appalled with two P's,
Hmm.
appalled that the people who attacked police officers would be pardoned. Well, he's when somebody tells you what they who they are and what they're going to do, believe them
Hmm.
as you know, and believe them for the first time. So so yeah, I think we will see more resignations. We'll certainly see firings.
Well, I think as some of these more extreme actions are bogging down in the courts, I
Yes,
think people will be heartened a little bit to take more of a stand. Hmm, God bless the governor of Maine.
I don't recall what the governor's main
Oh, the
is.
governor's Maine, and sorry, Your Excellency, but I don't remember um, the woman's name. But she, in the at the governor's meeting of governors, it was a conference that our current head of our current administration attended, and was telling her that you need to comply to these orders or you're not going to get any federal funding. And she looked him right in the face and said, "I'll see you in court."
Yeah,
Oh, it
Governor
was magnificent.
Janet T. Mills.
Yes, 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 Governor Mills. That is it.
Yep. Um, the chorus of the U.S. Army performed at the governor's ball,
Yes.
and they
It's
came
at
in.
this same meeting. It was at this same
Yeah,
conference.
they sang "Can You Hear the People Sing" from Les Miserables,
Yes.
which,
It's brilliant.
wow, wow, that
And of
was,
course, of course, people who have no sense of irony aren't going to get it. But
yeah, yeah,
no
wow,
irony and no shame.
right. Um,
But yeah, I thought that was a wonderfully chosen piece. I mean, anything from
was
Les Miserables is going to be.
absolutely, yeah. Um, well, we'll see, given what Maine, um, uh, apparently people are calling for her. They're starting a petition for recall
Oh, of course they are.
in Maine, but um,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
sycophants and bootlickers out there that are
yeah,
gonna
absolutely.
follow that, certainly.
Um,
But I think it's amazing that people in Maine, who do you think she's trying to defend,
yeah.
right? I'm
Uh, so um, perhaps we should, well, we're touching on it. I don't know that we want to limit our selves to it, but I think we could do another discussion just on examples or resistance of the week. You know, that might be a useful thing to highlight people. Profiles in Courage. If you remember the
oh yeah.
book written by John F. Kennedy before he became president,
Hmm.
Profiles in Courage, highlighting some of those modern profiles in courage. Um,
Sure. Yeah, I think that would be a nice little feature we could do to stay more current on stuff.
it was a 50C wrote in 56. Um, he had a ghostwriter,
Okay, yeah.
Ted Sorensen, who I think um, went on to work for his administration. But he wrote about John Quincy Adams, Daniel Webster, Thomas Hart Benton, um, Sam Houston, um, Edmund G. Ross, who voted for acquittal in the Andrew Johnson impeachment trial. Um, Robert A. Taft. Oh, interesting. Robert A. Taft for criticizing the Nuremberg trials, for trying Nazi criminals, war criminals under ex post facto laws. And it's one of the reasons he lost his bid to become the Republican nominee. So they're saying he was saying that it's criminal. The laws against what Nazis were doing didn't exist until
Oh,
afterwards.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
there's some crimes against humanity, I think,
it was
get a little,
coined. That term was coined for that, for that, for
yeah,
Nuremberg.
yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure that there's a whole, I think a whole other thing of statute of limitations and stuff for crimes against humanity.
yeah, but um, interesting. I think a new, yeah, we could talk about that. So, um, and I actually saw a movie about Andrew Johnson, President Andrew Johnson. There was a
Mm,
movie made in the fifth 40s, 30, 40s with Van Heflin, the
okay.
Hollywood actor,
Yeah.
um, as Andrew Johnson. And it was, wow, it was really a puff piece on Andrew Johnson.
Wow.
It minimized his corruption and it excused everything. I watched this. I don't know. I didn't set out to watch it. It was sort of came up, and I was like, a movie about Andrew Johnson?
Yeah, right.
It's like, wow, excusing every bad thing and every mistake and every misjudgment is
I,
absolutely terrible.
I've thought recently that that's interesting you bring that up because I've thought recently that it would be an interesting um, miniseries to see a unbiased or unvarnished Andrew Jackson
Oh,
series.
there was a
I
movie.
mean, he's a super interesting character, but in many ways vile.
Vile, absolutely. There was a movie. Um, he was played by Charlton Heston,
Yeah.
and there was, I think, Yul Brynner played Jean Lafitte.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah, yeah. That was in the 50s, I think that was made.
Yes, who is a distant ancestor of my brilliant and lovely wife.
Jean Lafitte.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you meant Yul Brynner.
No, 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 no.
Huh, that's interesting.
Wow. Yes. The movie, 1942 movie, Tennessee Johnson. John about Andrew Johnson,
Yeah.
starring Van Heflin. Johnson was originally an uneducated drifter who became a tailor in Tennessee. Um,
Okay. And just moved into politics from.
yeah. The film was a box office flop, but critics praised Heflin's performance. The NAACP protested the film.
Oh, well, that's good. That's worth something.
Yeah. Um,
There's a,
the, the film depicts the events surrounding Johnson's impeachment and presents its title character as Lincoln's worthy successor who runs afoul of vindictive radical Republicans.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
okay.
such bullshit.
Is it does it run as a double feature with Birth of a Nation?
You would think it's like the successor to it. Horrible, horrible.
God. I'm gonna make I'll make a little plug here for a new miniseries on Netflix called Zero Day. I
Zero.
recommend it.
Okay.
Robert De Niro heads up a stacked cast of stars, and I thought it was very good.
Okay. I'll look for it. Oh yeah, I see. That's quite a cast. Political thriller. Former president investigating a devastating cyber attack.
Yeah, and there are some interesting. Angela Bassett plays the president. I wonder who that's an analog for.
Yeah. Well,
So there are some modern day analogs, and even Robert De Niro's character is something of an analog. You can almost kind of see an alternative history um, Robert, not too many spoilers, but Robert De Niro's character is a former president who stepped down after a single term when his son died.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, but was considered at during his administration a respected president who could bring both parties together.
Mm,
So he's the one who is tapped for this particular job at the head of this commission to investigate Zero Day because he is respected and trusted by most of the nation
yeah.
still.
Cool. Okay.
But
I'll look
very
for it.
good.
Have you seen Captain the new Captain America movie?
No, though it's still in theaters. It
It
hasn't
is.
made it to the Disney Channel yet.
It is still in theaters. May 15th, Disney Channel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know that we'll get to see it in the theater, but I've seen the clips and I've watched the little extended trailer of it.
it seems like movies are by the time I get around to wanting to go see something in the theater, it's gone.
Yeah, and you just have to wait like 3 weeks for it to show up on streaming service.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Well, I think we've covered this,
I think so.
but um, profiles in courage. We could do profiles in infamy too.
Ooh, the what did Colbert do? The tip of the hat, wag of the finger
Mm,
kind of a thing.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Wag of the
Current
middle.
current affairs or
Oh yeah, I think. Well, we could go historical as well,
all
but
right, maybe alternating
yeah,
or something. No, we'll talk about it later.
yeah.
Stand by, people.
Okay.
We'll get we'll come up with something that will beguile and fascinate you, I'm sure.
So thank you everybody once again. Please like, subscribe, follow, share. Please comment. Tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about,
Yeah, please. We could use it.
and and and
And
stay strong. Yeah,
yeah, don't comply in advance.
right.
And in the
Um,
mean and to remind you not to comply in advance, be thou
a good night.
and true.